This is a game prototype that I've been working on for the last week, and the idea has been developed from a game jam concept to something that's surprisingly fun to play.
This is so cool, dude.
Hello there, and welcome to another video of me attempting to make a finished project. In this one, I'll be attempting to make a game with a goal to publish it on itch.io. It's been a long journey of indecision, but I finally convinced myself after a whole year to give game engines another shot. For months, I kept going back and forth, debating whether I should stick to raw frameworks or use a game engine. So I decided to experiment and see for myself. I started off by not using a game engine, and I only used C++ frameworks, and the experience was rough. I started off by attempting to make a drawing software using OpenGL, and then I made a Geometry Dash AliExpress version with SDL2. And lately, I made a particle swarm simulation using Raylib, which I haven't covered on this channel yet. You can find all these projects on my GitHub, but overall the experience of using just code was overwhelming, so I'll just give it a 5 out of 10. I also gave Unreal Engine 5 a try. Technically speaking, my experience went pretty smooth. Unreal is incredible, so I would give the experience a solid 8 out of 10. Now I'm moving on to a different game engine for my next project, the beloved Unity engine.
Okay.
I initially set out to create a game for the speed jam, and based on the time of me recording this video, the game jam has already finished and I ended up not submitting my project. So the concept that popped into my head when I first heard of the theme of the game jam was a plane. Inspired by this, I turned to my favorite corner of the internet to brainstorm. Here is what I came up with. The game concept revolves around a toy plane flying inside a kid bedroom, styled with a charming and cozy look. You as the pilot control the plane with a magnet attached to its underside, which allows you to pick up scattered objects around the room, and your mission would be to return each object to its rightful place. But of course, it's not easy as it sounds. The bedroom is full of obstacles that you will need to dodge while carefully maneuvering the plane. There is also a checklist of items to collect and organize, which would add a sense of a challenge to the game. And I'm also thinking to add a battery cell to the game, and so the player should collect them to keep the plane running. Put all these ingredients together and the result would be a fun, fast-paced, and slightly chaotic experience. So I went to Blender. I started off by blocking out the base shape for the plane. I added some extra details like the fans, the wheels, and some more shape adjustments. And after that, I dug a hole in the plane. Oh my god, that looks like an ice cream bowl. I also added a comfy chair for the pilot and a deck. And let's not forget about the pilot himself, which I named him Greg. Hi Greg. So I shaped his head, his torso, I gave him some tiny legs, and of course added a helmet, the hands, and a nice belly. And for security purposes, I attached some belts to him, and then I added steampunk goggles, which made him look like Porco Rosso.
Good guys were the ones who died.
This is Greg with the helmet. This is Greg without the helmet.
Why you bully me?
Enough with Greg. I added a magnet, and I sent everything to Substance Painter to do some watercoloring. I gave the plane a nice red color with some yellow stripes, and I kept on adding details. I painted Greg's face, and I gave him a nice fade on the sides, which gave him more personality than I thought it would. And yeah, I kept going back and forth with the details until I got something that I was satisfied with. This doesn't look bad. Well, for the movement, my initial idea was to put an invisible box in front of the plane, so that instead of the player controlling the plane directly, they would be controlling the box, which is followed by the plane, and that would give a smoother rotation movement. Well, on papers that works, but when I tried to implement it, I tried once. I tried twice.
Bye, have a great time.
I tried 3 times.
Fly me to the moon.
At that point, I just blamed it on Newton's laws of motions and I moved on. So my second idea was this. To better understand the concept that I'll be explaining, it's important to keep this illustration in mind. An airplane's rotation is governed by 3 key axes: yaw,
Yeah.
pitch, and roll. Each of these represents a specific way the airplane can rotate, and they provide. So for forward movement, when the W key is pressed, the plane gradually accelerates, which increases its current speed based on a specified acceleration value, and it goes up to a maximum value. If the W key is released but was pressed previously, the plane speed smoothly adjusts toward a predefined idle speed. I added this feature to ensure realistic behavior. For example, when the player stops pressing W mid-air, the plane doesn't abruptly stop, as that would defy natural motion. Instead, the plane accelerates to an idle speed so that it maintains a steady forward movement to simulate real-world aerodynamics. To add the flight feature, what I did was I wanted the player to reach a certain speed first before being able to take off. The pitch movement logic for the plane was straightforward. So when the space key is pressed, the plane tilts upward till -80° on x-axis to prevent it from excessive tilting. And I also used -80 and not -90 because I get a weird movement when the plane reaches -90 on x-axis. And when left control is pressed, the plane tilts downward till 90 degrees. If neither key is pressed, the plane gradually rotates back to its initial rotation, which is in this case 0. I also worked on the yaw movement. So in the function here, the rotation is calculated using a quaternion on the y-axis, and to improve the realism of the airplane's movement, I added a roll effect for left and right turns. Also, while prototyping with the game's movement, I accidentally discovered a feature. The plane unexpectedly started performing 360-degree rotations, and I thought, why not turn this into a feature? So now, every time the player presses Y, the plane performs a very cool 360-degree roll. Okay, well, enough with the movement. So for the animation, I used Unity to animate a very basic fans animation. Just placed 2 keyframes and then I animated the magnet, which was very simple as well. And now every time the player presses E, the magnet would show up. I also wanted to add a camera orbit feature around the plane to allow the player to explore the level and get a better perspective. After 2 days of trial and error, I finally achieved a result that works quite well, and it really improved the overall gameplay experience. Next, I created a wind effect using the particle system, which turned out to be much simpler than I initially expected. I applied the effect to both wings, and this turned out to be one of the coolest features added to the game. It just added more life to it. So, to add even more life to the game, I included sound effects. So I found this sound effect in freesound.com. And I simply looped it in Adobe Audition. I also added this sound that plays every time the magnetic is activated. To give the game a more stylized look with the bright and vibrant colors, I applied a toon shader and added an outline to the plane, and the result was this very adorable cartoony looking toy plane that matches the cute vibe that I wanted to achieve. Now, let's dive into one of the most important parts of the game, the pick up and drop system. I created a particle effect for when the magnet gets activated, which looks decent, but to keep things brief, I will explain the core mechanics. For prototyping, I used 3 boxes, black, white and blue. When the player picks up the white box, the original white box is destroyed and the magnet stays active, and a new white box appears beneath the magnet, making it look like the box is hanging from there. Each box has a corresponding drop zone that remains inactive until the player is holding that specific box. For example, if the player is holding the white box drop zone becomes active. When the player collides with the zone and presses the interaction key, the box attached to the magnet is destroyed and a new box appears in the drop zone. To manage this, I used lists and assigned each box color to a specific index, and I made sure to keep the same order of objects in each list, and this is the results of the game so far. Just to clarify things again, I'm using these boxes for prototyping purposes. In the upcoming videos, I will be focusing on polishing the level, adding a UI with menus. I will also be refining the collision system, as currently when the plane hits a wall, the movement becomes erratic. But for now, thank you for watching and I will catch you in the next one.